What if the bare spots in your yard filled themselves? Not with weeds, not with ground you have to mow around or mulch every spring. With flowers, with color, with a living, spreading, self-expanding garden that grows wider and fuller every single season without you purchasing another plant, digging another hole, or spending another dollar at the nursery. That is what a fast-spreading perennial does. You plant it once. It returns every year. And every season it pushes outward, covering more ground, producing more flowers, filling more of the yard with color than it did the year before. 3 seasons from now, that one plant you put in the ground this spring is a sweeping colony that looks like it was professionally planned from the very beginning, because it was. By you. This spring. Break time .05s. The 10 perennials in this video were chosen specifically because they spread reliably, vigorously, and with enough color impact to make the spreading feel like a gift rather than a problem. Plant number 2 spreads so fast it can double its footprint in a single growing season. Plant number 6 has been spreading across American gardens for nearly 300 years and shows no signs of slowing down. And plant number 9 is the single most requested plant in this channel's comment section, from gardeners who say it transformed their yard in ways they didn't think were possible from one purchase. Before plant 1, drop your US state in the comments right now. Your USDA hardiness zone determines how aggressively each of these spreaders performs in your specific climate, and we are calling out zones throughout this entire video. Break time equals Li05s.tr. Find yours before we start. And if Garden Senior Living is not already part of your weekly routine, subscribe before this video ends. Practical, zone-specific. Experience-based gardening content goes out every single week. The kind of guidance that helps you get more from every plant, every season, for less effort than you spent last year. Leave without subscribing, and the algorithm may not bring the next video back to you. 10 plants. Let's start spreading. Plant. Coreopsis Moonbeam. Plant 1 spreads underground, quietly, invisibly, and without asking permission, and one spring you walk outside to find it, has tripled its footprint without you touching it a single time. Coreopsis Moonbeam was named Perennial Plant of the Year in 1992. Not by hobbyists or gardening bloggers. Break time equals 05s. But by professional horticulturists whose careers depend entirely on knowing which plants actually deliver results over time. More than 30 years after that recognition, Coreopsis Moonbeam still appears on recommended planting lists for virtually every region of the continental United States. That staying power is decades of confirmed performance, not marketing momentum. The visual is a genuine soft cloud, small, buttery yellow flowers held just above fine, feathery green foliage on a mounding plant, roughly 18 inches tall and equally wide. The color is warm without being harsh. It works beside deep purple salvia, white daisies, or bold orange daylilies without clashing against any of them. Between the heaviest bloom periods, the foliage alone reads as full and well kept, which matters for a yard that needs to look tended all season. Break time equals 05s. Not just during a 2-week flowering peak. The spreading comes from underground rhizomes, horizontal stems traveling beneath the soil and pushing up new growth at intervals throughout the season. The plant's footprint grows measurably wider each spring without any effort from the gardener. No division required to keep the expansion moving. Coreopsis Moonbeam runs on its own schedule and reports back every spring with a larger, fuller, more productive planting than the year before. The specific problem this plant solves is one most gardeners recognize immediately. The south-facing bed baking through August, the strip along the driveway that turns to powder by July, the sunny bank where annuals collapse within 3 weeks of planting. Coreopsis Moonbeam does not merely survive in those spots. It performs best in them. Break time 05s. Heat and drought are not obstacles for this plant. Those are the exact conditions under which it produces its densest bloom coverage and its longest season. Droughopsis is native to the prairies, open woodlands, and roadsides of North America, from Ontario through Florida. It did not adapt to American summer heat after being brought here. It evolved inside those conditions over thousands of years. Zones 3 through 9. Full sun essential. Partial shade cuts bloom production noticeably. Average to lean soil. Water consistently through the first season, then back off and let the established roots handle the work. No fertilizer needed. Cut back to 4 inches in late fall or early spring. Divide every 4 years to keep the center pushing at full strength. Break time 05s, plant 2. Yarrow achillea, plant 2, covers the most ground the fastest of any perennial on this entire list. A well-established yarrow planting can double its footprint in a single growing season. That is not a rough estimate. That is what yarrow does when it is happy. And yarrow is happy in conditions that defeat almost everything else a gardener might attempt to plant in the same spot. Yarrow has been growing across North America for thousands of years on rocky slopes, dry prairies, and thin soil where survival depends entirely on the plant's own systems, rather than on any external care. That survival history is the precise reason it covers ground faster, under worse conditions, with less water than anything else on this list. Flat, wide flower clusters 3 to 5 inches across, held on upright stems above feathery. Break time .05's dotty silver green foliage that smells faintly herbal when you brush past it, available in yellow, white, pink, and red depending on the variety selected. The foliage stays attractive between bloom periods, which matters for a yard that needs to look intentional all season. Not just during 2 weeks of peak flowering, 2 spreading mechanisms run simultaneously. Rhizomes push outward underground and establish new growth points every season. At the same time, the plant self-seeds heavily, dropping large volumes of small seeds that germinate in spring around and well beyond the parent plant. Every division yarrow produces is a free, transplantable, blooming-size plant. Manage a mature yarrow planting correctly over a decade, and it supplies you with more free plants than most people would ever know what to do with. Break timey .05's. The problem it solves is large bare areas that cost too much to fill with nursery plants, rocky slopes, thin sandy soil where everything else fails, sunny banks that have defeated every previous planting attempt. Yarrow was growing in those exact conditions before most cultivated garden plants existed. Archaeological evidence places yarrow among the earliest plants humans deliberately kept near their settlements. Over 60,000 years ago. For gardeners watching who use herbs medicinally, yarrow carries documented astringent properties with a well-established history of use in wound care across nearly every culture on Earth, zones 3 through 9. Full sun. Lean to average soil. Rich soil produces tall, floppy stems and reduces bloom significantly. No supplemental water once the root system is established. Divide every 2 to 3 years. Break time equals .05's, the fastest ground-covering perennial on this list, from a plant that has been doing exactly this for longer than recorded history. Plant 3. Black-Eyed Susan, Rudbeckia goldsterm. Plant 3 solves the problem that drains the energy from more American gardens than any other seasonal gap, and it does it while simultaneously feeding the birds that visit your yard from October through February. The midsummer gap. That stretch from mid-July through early September when early summer perennials are finished and fall color hasn't arrived. The garden goes flat, colorless. The energy it had in June disappears for 6 full weeks. Black-Eyed Susan goldsterm owns that stretch completely, bright golden yellow petals surrounding deep near black centers, blooming from July through September exactly when most other perennials are winding down. Break time .05's. 2 spreading mechanisms keep this plant expanding. The root clump grows outward each season and produces more flowering stems from a wider base. At the same time, seed heads left standing through winter drop viable seed that sprouts into new plants the following spring within a foot or 2 of the parent. Leave those seed heads standing through the cold months and you get 2 returns simultaneously. Seedlings in spring and goldfinches feeding on the seeds from October straight through February. A single established clump can generate 8 to 12 new seedlings in surrounding soil over a 2-year period without the gardener doing anything except not cutting the plant down in fall. 2-foot stems topped with those bold gold and black flowers read as naturalistic and polished at the same time. They perform equally well in formal borders, break time .05's, dock key along fence lines, and in relaxed meadow-style plantings where a more structured plant would look completely out of place. The National Wildlife Federation lists Black-Eyed Susan among the top 5 plants for supporting native bird populations in residential American gardens, specifically for its seed production volume. One mature clump produces thousands of seeds in a single season, zones 3 through 9. Full sun. Tolerates poor, dry soil better than most perennials on this list. Strong drought tolerance once established. Divide every 3 years to keep clumps productive. Leave seed heads standing through winter. That is the instruction that makes this plant earn its space through every month of the year, not just the months it is blooming. Break time, 0.05's plant 4. Balm monarda plant 4 spreads faster than almost any other flowering perennial on this list and attracts more hummingbirds per planting than any other fast-spreading perennial in this climate range. Bee balm's bloom structure was shaped by millions of years of coevolution, specifically to match a hummingbird's bill and feeding behavior. The tube length, the bloom angle, the intensity of the red and pink tones, every detail calibrated to a hummingbird's anatomy and preferences. No other fast-spreading perennial in the continental United States generates the same volume of hummingbird visits as an established bee balm planting in full bloom, ruby-throated hummingbirds, which cover the eastern two-thirds of the United States, visit up to 1,000 flowers per day during migration. Break time E.05's. In suburban neighborhoods where tubular flowers are scarce, a mature bee balm planting becomes the primary reason hummingbirds stay rather than simply pass through. Gardeners with established plantings report daily visits from June through September, a living, returning presence in the yard that no feeder can fully replicate. Underground rhizomes spread this plant fast. A single clump can triple its footprint in 2 growing seasons. That spreading rate is what makes bee balm one of the most effective bare ground fillers on this list, and what makes the one management requirement non-negotiable: divide every 2 years without exception. Clumps that are not divided become crowded at the center, reducing bloom production and increasing susceptibility to the powdery mildew that affects bee balm in humid climates. Break time 0.05's spiky tubular blooms in blazing red, deep pink, rich purple, and bright white, stems 2 to 4 feet tall. A mass planting along a back fence or property edge creates a visual anchor that draws the eye immediately and holds it. Choose mildew-resistant varieties. Jacob Klein for red, the most hummingbird-effective color at the greatest distance, and Marshall's Delight for pink. Both perform reliably across the humid summers of the eastern United States where standard varieties struggle. Zones 3 through 9. Full sun to partial shade. Average to moist soil. Divide every 2 years. The fast-spreading perennial that brings the most wildlife activity per square foot of any plant on this list. Break time? Zo5's plant 5. Salvia May Night, plant 5 announces itself from across the yard with vertical flower spikes in a color so saturated that most people stop and ask if it is real, and it does it while deer walk past it completely uninterested. Salvia May Night was named Perennial Plant of the Year in 1997 and still appears in professional landscape designs across the country nearly 3 decades later. No other plant at the same price point delivers that specific combination of color intensity, vertical structure, deer resistance, and near-zero maintenance in a single package. Tall, upright flower spikes, 18 to 24 inches, in deep violet blue, rising above a base of dark green, strongly aromatic foliage. The color is not soft, not pastel. It is saturated and bold in a way that reads confidently from across the yard. Break time 05's. Those vertical spikes introduce structural variety that most home borders lack entirely. Against a mass of yellow Coreopsis Moonbeam or white Shasta daisies already in the ground, the contrast looks deliberately designed rather than accidentally assembled. The root mass expands outward each season, producing a wider base of flowering stems every year. Cut the plant back by half after the first bloom flush, and it pushes a second full wave of flowers within 3 to 4 weeks. 2 complete bloom periods per season from one planting. First one in late spring, second one in late summer, carrying color through the 2 transition periods when most borders go quiet. The aromatic compounds in the foliage that make this plant smell remarkable to gardeners are precisely what make deer consistently avoid it. For gardeners in the Northeast, break time 0.05's, Dottie Midwest, and Mid-Atlantic dealing with deer pressure that eliminates most flowering perennials from open beds. This is one of the most reliable unprotected border solutions available. Zones 4 through 8. Full sun, well-drained soil, standing water will kill this plant. Drought-resistant once established. Divide every 3 to 4 years in spring. The vertical statement plant that deer ignore and pollinators cannot resist. 5 plants in. Which of these spreaders are already growing in your yard? Drop the name in the comments, and if you have had one for more than 3 years, tell everyone watching how much ground it has covered. Real numbers from real yards in real zones are more useful than anything said from this side of a camera. Garden Senior Living covers this kind of specific practical. Break time equals 0.05's .c Zone Honest Gardening Guidance every single week. If this video has already given you something useful, the subscribe button is the decision worth making before you close it. The next video is already planned, and it covers the companion plants that make every one of these 10 spreaders perform at a measurably higher level. Subscribe so it finds you automatically. Plant 6. Creeping Phlox. Subulata Plant 6 has been spreading across American gardens since the 1740s, nearly 300 years of confirmed performance, and it addresses the one seasonal gap that every other plant on this list leaves completely open: the early spring gap, the 3 to 5 weeks between the last frost and the first summer perennial bloom, when even a well-planted yard looks bare, brown, and completely unfinished. Break time equal 0.05's. Every other plant on this list blooms in summer or fall. Creeping Phlox blooms in April and May, before anything else on this list shows a single flower. In full bloom, it is a carpet, a flat 4 to 6 inch plant so densely covered with small 5-petaled flowers in pink, white, lavender, red, and magenta that the foliage underneath disappears entirely. Draped over a wall edge or raised bed rim, it cascades downward in a sheet of color that stops traffic, literally. The early spring display this plant produces is one of the most dramatic of the entire gardening year. Lateral stems extend outward from the plant's center and root directly into the soil wherever they contact the ground. No rhizomes, no seeds. Break time 0.05's. T direct stem-to-soil rooting expanding the coverage area steadily each season, 6 to 12 inches per year in each direction under good conditions. The spread is controlled enough to be managed, but vigorous enough to fill a slope, a rock garden, or a front border edge with meaningful coverage within 2 to 3 seasons. The evergreen mat Creeping Phlox stays green, dense, and weed-resistant through every month of the year, including the months when nothing else is growing at all. For gardeners who kneel less than they used to, a dense mat of established Creeping Phlox eliminates weeding in those areas completely, native to the eastern United States and documented in American gardens since the 1740s. Nearly 300 years of proven performance in American yards, a track record no other plant on this list can match. Break time equals 0.5 zones 3 through 9. Full sun, 6 hours minimum. Well-drained soil without exception. No supplemental water after the first season. Shear lightly after blooming to keep the mat compact and encourage the densest possible coverage the following spring. Plant 7. Catmint nipida, Walker's Low. Plant 7 is the controlled spreader on this list. The one for gardeners who want reliable expansion and non-stop color without the kind of aggressive rhizome travel that requires active management to keep in bounds. Catmint Walker's Low expands steadily through clump division rather than underground runners, filling its designated space reliably each year without crossing into neighboring plants. That controlled growth habit makes it one of the most practical spreading perennials for borders, path edges, break time 0.05's, .p and container gardens, situations where aggressive spreading would create problems rather than solve them. The bloom production is extraordinary. Cascading mounds of lavender blue flowers on softly arching stems from May through October. 6 full months of color from a single plant that comes back stronger every year. Shear it back by half in midsummer when the first flush fades and a second full bloom cycle arrives within 3 weeks. 2 complete bloom periods per season. Every season, the silvery green foliage carries a mild herbal fragrance that deer, rabbits, and most biting insects find deeply unappealing. For gardeners building a spreading border in open, exposed areas where deer pressure eliminates most flowering choices, Catmint holds up without any protective measures whatsoever. Break time East 005's butterflies are strongly attracted to the flower spikes throughout both bloom cycles. Bees treat established catmint plantings as a primary food source from May through October. The wildlife activity a mature catmint border generates, visible, consistent, happening without any deliberate effort from the gardener, is one of the most satisfying returns this plant delivers alongside the color. Walker's Low is the benchmark. Award-winning, 18 to 24 inches tall, the most reliable catmint for American gardens across nearly every climate zone. Cat's Meow is more compact and self-cleaning, blooming without any deadheading, ideal for smaller spaces and gardeners wanting even less involvement. Six Hills Giant is larger and more dramatic for gardeners wanting bold spreading impact in a wide open border. Zones 3 through 8. Full sun. Average soil. Break time equals 05s, drought tolerant once established. Divide every 4 years to keep the center producing at full strength. Plant 8. Daily Hemericulus Plant 8 spreads steadily outward through expanding root fans every season and gives you access to 35,000 colors to choose from while it does it. Most American gardeners grow one of 3 common orange daylily varieties and believe they have seen what this plant is genuinely capable of. The actual color range available: deep burgundy, warm gold, pale cream, near black, soft lavender, blazing coral red, and bicolors that appear designed rather than naturally occurring, is broad enough that daylilies alone could carry a garden from June through October without repeating a single color. Tuberous root fans expand outward each season. Break time 0.05s, dat pre-producing new growth points around the perimeter of the original clump. A plant purchased this spring becomes measurably wider the following season and significantly larger by year 3. Divide that clump and each section becomes a full blooming plant within 1 season. A single purchase this spring, compounding into a multi-location planting across the yard at 0 additional cost over the next several years. Each individual bloom opens for 1 day. That is where the name originates. But a single established clump produces 40 to 60 buds across multiple stems over a 6-week window. Something is always opening. The display never goes fully quiet. In containers, the restricted root environment keeps daylilies tidy and concentrated. In open beds, break time 05s, the spreading root fans fill ground progressively each season. The kind of low-maintenance coverage that makes a bare slope or wide bed look established and intentional without requiring replanting year after year. Virtually pest and disease-free across all U.S. regions. Morning sun with afternoon shade extends individual bloom life noticeably in Zone 7 and warmer, Zones 3 through 9. Full sun to partial shade. Drought tolerant once established. No deadheading required. Spent blooms drop cleanly on their own. Divide every 4 to 5 years when the center stops blooming well. Each division immediately becomes a free, blooming-sized plant you can move to a new location or share with a neighbor. Break time. Zo5s. Plant 9, Coneflower, Echinacea purpura Plant 9, is the most requested plant in this channel's comment section from gardeners who describe it as the single purchase that transformed their yard in ways they did not think were possible. The reason is not the bloom, though the bloom is beautiful. The reason is what this plant does across every single month of the calendar year without being asked. It blooms from early summer through fall. It feeds monarchs, swallowtails, and native bees through the entire season. After the petals drop, the raised copper-bronze seed cone stands through fall and winter, feeding goldfinches, chickadees, and house finches from October through February. It self-seeds the following spring, producing free plants in the surrounding soil, and the following summer it returns stronger, wider, break time 05s, and more productive than it was the year before. 5 distinct returns from one plant. No other fast-spreading perennial on this list delivers all 5 simultaneously. The self-seeding is the primary spreading mechanism. Leave the seed head standing through winter. This is not optional if you want the colony to expand. Seeds fall naturally into the surrounding soil and germinate the following spring. A 3-year-old clump divided in spring produces 4 to 6 transplantable sections, each blooming in its first season. Within 4 years, one coneflower becomes a full naturalistic colony. Echinacea purpura is native to the central and eastern United States, evolved in the prairies and open woodlands, where American summer heat, drought, and periodic flooding are the baseline conditions, not the exceptions. Break time equal 0.05s. That evolutionary history is why it handles everything the American growing season produces without requiring anything from the gardener beyond not cutting it down too early in fall. Magnus purple produces larger flower heads than the wild species with a more upright habit. White swan is pure white with orange centers, slightly more shade tolerant. Hot paprika produces double orange-red flowers, the most dramatic modern coneflower available to American container and garden gardeners right now. Zones 3 through 9. Full sun to light shade. Leave seed heads through winter. Long-lived, an established planting can expand and persist for 20 years or more. Plant 10, Shasta Daisy leucanthemum, X Superbum Plant 10 is the one that makes neighbors slow their cars down when they drive past your yard. A sweeping, break time 005's dotty expanding mass of crisp white and yellow bloom that looks professionally designed and costs the price of a single plant purchased one spring. One Shasta daisy, left completely alone for 3 seasons, becomes a 12-square-foot mass of white and yellow blooming from June through September without a single replanting. Crisp white petals, bold yellow centers, clean upright stems standing 2 to 3 feet tall. It reads as finished and intentional whether you put in 5 plants or 50. Full sun beats on it all day long and the color does not fade. 2 spreading mechanisms run simultaneously. The root clump expands outward every season, producing more and more flowering stems from a wider base each year. At the same time, break time 05's, the plant drops seeds into surrounding soil, seeds that germinate the following spring and push up fresh plants within 2 feet of the parent on their own. 3 seasons from now, that one Shasta daisy is a full colony. Cut the stems for indoor arrangements, and they hold beautifully in a vase for 5 to 7 days. Plant this beside deep purple salvia or burgundy daylilies, and the contrast is the kind of combination that makes people stop mid-conversation to ask what is growing in your yard. Shasta daisy was developed by American botanist Luther Burbank in the 1890s, a deliberate cross between 4 separate species engineered specifically for North American growing conditions. That origin is precisely why it outperforms so many naturally occurring plants in home gardens across the country. Break time 05's. It was purpose-built for the climate and soil conditions American gardeners actually deal with every season. Zones 4 through 9. Full sun, 6 hours minimum. Well-draining soil. Drought-tolerant once established. Handles dry stretches without complaint after the first season. Deadhead spent blooms regularly to extend the flowering window well into fall. Divide the clump every 3 years in spring. Each division is a transplantable blooming-size plant you can move to a new bed or give to a neighbor at 0 cost. 10 fast-spreading perennials. 1 planting decision. Here is every one of them. Coreopsis Moonbeam. Buttery yellow rhizome spreader. Thrives in heat and drought. Blooms hardest where other plants fail. Zones 3 to 9. Yarrow. Fastest ground covering spreader on this list. Thrives in poor dry soil. Doubles footprint in 1 season. Break time equal 05's every division free. Zones 3-9. Black-eyed Susan Goldsturm. Gold with near-black centers. Fills the midsummer gap, self-seeds, and feeds birds through winter. Zones 3-9. Balm. Triples footprint in 2 seasons. The definitive hummingbird plant. Divide every 2 years without exception. Zones 3 to 9. Salvia May Night. Deep violet-blue spikes. 2 bloom cycles per season. Deer-proof. Vertical structure most borders lack. Zones 4-8. Creeping Phlox. The only spring bloomer on this list, evergreen mat year-round. Documented in American gardens since 1740. Zones 3-9. Catmint Walker's Low. 6 months of lavender blue bloom. Controlled spreader that stays in bounds. Double bloom season with 1 midsummer cut. Zones 3 to 8. Daylily. 35,000 cultivars. Expanding root fans. Produce free divisions every few years. Virtually indestructible. Break time 0.05's. Zones 3-9. Coneflower. The most requested plant in this channel's comments, 5 distinct seasonal returns from 1 plant, 20-year garden presence, zones 3-9, Shasta daisy. Clumps and self-seed simultaneously. Crisp white and yellow display from June through September, purpose-built for American growing conditions, zones 4-9. A spreading perennial is a different kind of garden investment, not the kind that requires annual reinvestment, not the kind that needs replacing when the season gets difficult, the kind that compounds, the kind that looks better next year than it does this year, and better the year after that, and keeps getting wider and fuller and more beautiful with every season that passes, without asking for more from the gardener who planted it. 1 planting, 1 April or May window, break time 0.05's, and then years of expanding color that takes care of itself. That is the garden most people spend years trying to build by purchasing more plants every spring. These 10 get you there by purchasing fewer and letting the plants do what they were designed to do. Which of these 10 are you most likely to plant this season? Drop the number in the comments. And if you have had a fast-spreading perennial in your yard for more than 3 years, tell everyone watching how much ground it has covered and what it looks like now compared to when you first planted it. Those real accounts from real yards in real zones help every gardener reading below this video understand what they are actually investing in. If this video gave you one plant worth growing, or all 10, the like button is how you help other gardeners find this information. 1 second puts this in front of someone making the exact same decisions you just made. Garden Senior Living publishes a new video every single week. Next week, we are covering the companion plants that make every one of these 10 spreaders perform at a measurably higher level. Better bloom density, stronger spread, more wildlife through every season. Miss that video and you leave real results on the table. Scott's gear, so it finds you automatically. Now get those plants in the ground. The spreading starts this season. Garden Senior Living. Plant once. Spread forever.